Hey, so I actually got a cool announcement to start this week's video off. The channel now has members. You can actually go ahead and join the channel to get a cool nifty little badge next to your name in the comments, and some emotes to use in premieres. So if that sounds cool to you, go ahead and hit that join button beside the sub button, which reminds me, you should hit the sub button. My god, what a YouTuber I have become. But with that said, everybody, hello and welcome back to our weekly Misfit of Demon King Academy video. Today we're going to be talking all about Episode 8, The Final Duel. Well, it's not really final, but we'll get into that as we go. But with that said, everybody, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a little bit tongue-tied at the beginning, if you couldn't tell, and I am shocked at the amount of stuff that they jam-packed into this week's episode. I mean, for real, guys, like, they really went in this week. Silverlink just was like, you know what? Throw everything in there. Just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And for the most part, it all sticks. Yeah, no, it all sticks. Like, I was trying to think of, like, is there anything that I thought that didn't quite stick the landing? And no, I liked everything that was in the episode. I will say it's a lot. So if you're not really in the mood for a bunch of, like, concepts to be thrown at you all at once, it might be overwhelming. I didn't really think it was. I will admit that I looked at my notes, I'm like, damn, that's a lot of notes. Like, I was, like, surprised at how much stuff happened. But honestly, a lot happened, and yet at the same time, it's not going to be difficult to talk about what happened. Like, it's not like we got to be like, oh, and then this happened, and that led to this, and this led to that, and yada yada. No, not really. Like, it's just sort of like watching different plot elements from the last few episodes, specifically all the stuff that happened after Ray showed up, watching them all sort of coalesce into a nice little finale to this particular arc with Ray, and it's neat. And I will say that this definitely feels like the button on Ray's little mini arc with Voldi, since I believe next week it said the preview for next week just said, like, the mystery of the Hero Academy. So it's like, are we gonna go see the Hero Academy next week? Like, how are we even gonna do that? Are the demon kids allowed to go hang out with the hero kids? Is that even okay? It's gonna be interesting, but we'll find out next week. What happened this week, though, it can basically be divided into two particular characters. We could talk about Voldi being Voldi, and we could talk about that glorious Ray shine. We're going to start with Voldi, though, because A, Voldi's our boy, and B, I'll admit that a lot of the stuff surrounding Voldi, I was sort of like, aha, yes, of course! I don't know what that means. Now, you guys know me. There's a lot of stuff that sort of flies over my head, right? They'll start talking about magic circles and magic something or other, and I'm like, uh-huh, yeah, I knew that. That makes total sense to me. But at the end of the day, even though the magic system confuses me just a wee bit, not overly, just a wee bit, and that's mostly just because I have a brain the size of a pea. Y'all know this. But I still enjoy the shit out of it, right? Like, I still love seeing the fights. And the fight that we see here is huge, right? It's on a huge, huge scale. Not only do you have the people in the arena, but you also have audiences across the kingdom watching this. Like, everyone in Dilhev, or Dilhev, I believe that's the name of their town. Everybody there is, like, witnessing the fight between Ray and Voldi. Everybody's attention is, like, glued to this fight. This whole Magic Sword tournament is a huge, huge deal. And the fact that there's so many eyes watching this tournament is going to be important later. So keep that in the back of your mind. But just before the fight happens, immediately, there is some fuckery. And I knew there would be. Because, like, yeah, of course, right? Like, we are under the assumption that Avos Dilhevia is somewhere in the vicinity. We don't necessarily know if he's, like, there. We do have something that we should talk about later with Dilhevia, but for the most part, we don't know if he's necessarily there or if he's just speaking through the owl. Because that owl seems to be, like, talking directly to Voldi, like, through his mind. Basically just kind of threatening Voldi, saying, like, the magic ring, or the magic bracelet is going to suck the energy out of you, and will overload Ray's mom if you're not careful. And Ray, if you try to take out Ray, then he'll die because of the whole, like, binding thing around his source. So basically the owl's just telling Voldi, like, you're screwed. And Voldi's like, am I? Oh, is it? Okay, that's interesting. that's false because I'm Voldi. You know what I mean? Like I said previously, Voldi is like the Chuck Bass of anime. Just like oh, how were you able to do that? Because I'm Chuck Bass. Like the instant like anything happens, like how were you able to do that? Because I'm Anos Voldegord. And let me tell you what my man Voldi is capable of. My man Voldi is capable of going toe-to-toe with Ray in a blindingly cool fight, and I mean like blindingly cool. The showdown between Voldi and Ray is hella dope, and it's pretty much what I wanted from these animators. Like this is what I wanted to see from this particular team over at Silverlink, and it's not like don't get me wrong. Like with Silverlink, a lot of the crew worked on another show that I really loved and was such a surprise to me, and that was Bofuri. And Bofuri has a lot of the same team, which tells me that I know that their action scenes can be better. You know what I mean? Like I know that Bofuri's action is amazing. So I was kind of expecting some of that like a few weeks ago when we had like Voldi versus Ray, right? But here, this is pretty much a little bit closer to what I wanted. It's still not quite as like bombastic and holy shit as I wanted. But considering this was like the quote-unquote final duel, it is basically what I wanted. Like, it looks hella cool. Like, the way that they move is dope. There's these clean as a whistle shots, right? Just like, oh, so sick. Like, one of these shots that I loved was Ray, like, diving in for a big sweep, right? Like, he goes to sort of, like, cleave at Voldi, and Voldi, like, dodges and then sort of, like, moves his arm up to sort of slash up at Ray. And Ray just sort of like just narrowly like turns his head and the sword just grazes his cheek, like doesn't cut him, just sort of like the blunt side of the sword just sort of like touches past Ray's cheek. Oh, it's so sick. And there's tons of shots like that. It's a very brief fight though. Like it's very, very quick. And they move so fast it becomes that scene from Battle of Gods, like from Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. I almost called it Super. It wasn't quite Super then yet. But in Battle of Gods, there's that scene where Roshi's like, hey, they're moving so fast. Are you seeing this, Krillin? Nope, totally lost. Like, that's the audience. Like, just the audience is Krillin. Just like, nope, I'm totally lost. And I don't mean us, the audience. We actually get to see it play out normally. But you see that the audience in universe can't see them fighting because they're moving so blindingly fast. Whereas what we get to see is this sort of like slowed down time, so you actually get to see each slice. Like it's really cool. And Ray does manage to get some slashes on Voldi, which again, Ray is, to my knowledge, Ray, Ivas, and eventually, who we find out later, Melheis, are the only ones who are able to actually damage Voldi, unless I'm mistaken. I think that's pretty much it. But alas, Ray does not manage to secure a win as the final blow happens, and it looks like Voldi loses for like a second, right? Because Voldi's arm goes flying off, and I'm thinking like, oh shit, right? Like, wow, Ray did it. But then we see that Voldi kind of caught him in the chest, and I was like, no, not my boy. I knew that Voldi would bring him back, but I was still sort of like, oh shit. And Ray just kind of like, you know, he's just holds on to Voldi for a sec. He just says, I had a good time, Anos, and then sort of crumples down. And as Ray falls, Voldi sort of notices like, oh, something's happening. And these weird, trippy visuals ensue as Voldi finds himself in some sort of dimensional prison, as they called it, and it looks hella rad. But who should it be? Who is the mastermind behind all this? Melheis! No! That legitimately, I was shocked, right? Because I was like, Melheis! And I was thinking, I'm like, oh, you guys never told me! How could you? But also, thank you for not spoiling that surprise, but how could you not tell me? I was so upset. I was like, oh, the good folks, they turned on me. They never told me. Because I was talking about how much I thought Melheis was a cool character last week, so I thought he really had broken bad. And I was shocked because y'all didn't say nothing to me. And, like, nobody even hinted. I was like, damn, the good folks didn't tell me shit this time. Usually somebody accidentally spills something. All right, usually somebody spills the beans and I get a vague idea of what's going to happen. And in fairness, even in this moment, I wasn't totally clear on what was happening, because Melheis isn't necessarily bad. It's that after he met Voldi, somebody kind of, you know, assaulted him and then, like, sort of brainwashed him and planted some sort of, I can't remember what they call it, some sort of something. into his brain, which Voldi manages to sort of stab with his old man's sword. Actually, it's not his dad's sword. It's actually Venus de Nor, which is the coolest friggin' thing on the planet. I love Venus de Nor. We'll get into it in a second. But yeah, Melheis, as it turns out, was the big bad of this, at least at the end of this particular arc. And it all goes according to Keikaku at the beginning, man. I'm telling you, like, a weakened Voldi, based on all the things that Melheis had set up, then has to contend with not just Melheis himself, but those other two dudes, like the other two elder demon emperors, who were teaching, or at least attempted to teach Voldi and Ray how to use magic swords. Those guys show up. So now, like, Voldi's like, oh, crap, right? Like, this is gonna suck. Mind you, he doesn't necessarily say it like that, but he's thinking like, okay, I can handle this, but mostly because I'm not alone. And it turns out, you know, Ray obviously is just like, it was all a ruse. But we're not here to talk about Ray just yet. We're here to talk about Voldi. And basically what happens is Ray and Voldi get separated, and we'll get into why later. But Melheis then attacks Voldi with Beno Iavun, whatever. Beno Iavun. And Beno Iavun is the wall, basically, that Voldi and the hero managed to create in the aftermath of Voldi's death. That sort of, like, weird, like, black mist thing, that wall that separated the worlds from each other, that is what Melheis is actually able to control and wield. And again, I'm thinking, like, oh man, Melheis betrayed us. But we find out later, like, again, nah, Melheis didn't betray anybody. As we find out later, when Venus de Nor cuts into Melheis' head, which is like, yikes. It was just, you know, implanted there. But it is a dope-ass fight that precedes, that follows Melheis' big reveal. And, like I said, in fairness, it all pretty much goes according to Keikaku. Like, this dude really did go into the situation as prepared as he could be to face off with Voldi. And it's just the fact that Voldi's just a friggin' badass. And Venus de Nor is so OP. Like, this sword, as Voldi says, like, did you really think that you could avoid it by dodging? Like, did you really think that by dodging you could dodge? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what does that mean, Voldi? And he follows that up by saying, the magic sword of destruction annihilates all laws. And I'm like, I'm sorry, so this sword is so OP that it defies the laws of nature itself. That is some JoJo, like, top-tier S-rank stand shit, right? Like, that is some, like, gold experience Requiem shit. Like, that'd be a good question. Like, who would win the fight? Voldi with Venus de Nor or Giorno with gold experience Requiem? Actually, you know what? Requiem. Requiem, because Requiem brings everything back to zero. So, yeah, I'm gonna say Requiem, but the mere fact that I even had to think about that goes to show how friggin' powerful Venus de Nor is. Like, that sword is wicked OP, and my boy Voldi is wicked OP to boot as well. But, yeah, like, that whole thing is great. And what's even more interesting to me is the fact that afterwards we find out, again, like I said, that Melheis was our boy. But they sort of, they bring back the other two demon emperors, right? And Voldi's like, so your soul is intact, but theirs is sort of like, it's been swapped and replaced, right? So let's get rid of that. Crash, and he gets rid of like the like sort of ripped apart souls, and he just keeps the old demon emperor sources intact. I keep calling them souls. I mean to say source. Same thing, but you know I should say source. That's what they're called in the show. So yeah, he gets their source, right? And he's like, blah, 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 blah. He says something, but then he notices somebody. And I was like, oh, shit. And there's a dude wearing a mask, right? And actually, he kind of looks like one of the masked dudes from Ultimate Muscle, which is like, I'm sorry I even referenced Ultimate Muscle, but it's kind of who he reminded me of. And Voldi says, like, are you Avos Del Hevia? And I was like, oh, shit. Are we going to get the showdown? But this dude just kind of skulks into the background. Dude just, like, sulks away. And I'm like, what? Oh man, like, because I was really looking forward to seeing that. And then, yeah, Voldi basically secures the big win. After that, time goes back to normal. They all go back to the stadium. Voldi gets the big win, and instead of saying, like, yeah, that's right, I did it, I'm a badass, and I'm also the Demon King, so, like, everybody, like, down on a knee, please. Instead he thanks his old man for forging this sword with love, with love in his heart. And again, that's going to be important. Put that in the back pocket. Why is that important? Well, because it involves the Ray Shine. My boy Ray. This dude, Ray, as I said, man, like, Ray gets a significant amount of shine. Ray is probably my favorite, which is saying something because Voldi's the man. Voldi is like that classic, like, the OP character, but they know they're OP, so they have fun with it, They're not like just like a bland character who's OP for the sake of being OP. Like, Voldi has fun being OP. Whereas Ray is sort of like, he's more, like, I don't want to say timid. It's more like he's more aloof. Like, Ray is aware that he's OP, but he doesn't let it go to his head. He's just a sweet lad, He's just a sweet dude trying to save his mom. It's great. And what's interesting, too, is that Ray, in the midst of the fight, right, reveals that his bracelet is just for show. It's not actually draining his magic. Only Voldi's. And Voldi's like, oh, you cheeky? Like, you knew. And Ray reveals, like, yeah, and the Royalists said that they only want me to buy time. And I wrote in my notes, like, bro, this is cold. Ray, why? Like, why are you doing this, Ray? You're my boy. I hate seeing him like that. But out of the blue random, Ray cuts into his own arm. He cuts into the left arm, right? And the whole audience is like, why did he do that? And in doing that, it activates the swords around his source. And even Voldi's like, what did you do that for? And Ray, I mean, he doesn't say it like that, because, Voldi not going to show emotion like that, but he does go like, I can't believe you just did that. And Ray basically says to Voldi, like, I don't care anymore. At this point, I want to go, if I'm going out, and I have a feeling like I am, I'm going out on my own terms. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. And it leads to a dope-ass fight between Ray and Voldi, which, as we talked about already, is friggin' awesome. The two of them basically using one arm, just their right, to have this insane clash. So we didn't even get to see the full power, Like, they both are not using their left, so it's just the right. And so we don't get to see the full scope, right, of this fight, which means maybe there's a sparring match down the line to come where we do get to see that, and that'd be hella cool. But as I did say, Anos gets the final blow, and there's the whole line, like, I had a good time, Anos. And this leads to them getting stuck in that sort of prison, right? But this is where we actually shift focus from Voldi in the dimensional prison to Ray in the dimensional prison by talking about the fact that Ray easily takes out the other two with blinding speed, and it turns out that Ray has actually triple-crossed. He was with Voldi, and then it turns out he wasn't with Voldi, but actually, no, he was with Voldi the whole time, working against the guy who he was pretending to leave Voldi for. Triple cross. And yeah, like I said, Ray basically just puts all his faith in Voldi, because Melheis, like, mind-controlled Melheis says, like, I didn't even see any signs of you becoming cohorts. Like, I don't understand. Like, there was no sign of you two talking during that fight. I don't get how we got to this point. And Ray just says that he put his full faith into Voldi. Like, no plan, just trusted that he would figure it out. Like, trusted that Voldi would find a way. The level of faith in each other is so great. Like, I loved that scene. Now, y'all know me. My ship is Voldi and Misha. However, I gotta say, even the show itself has Fujoshi in it. So my Fudanshi self was like, man, Ray and Voldi kind of be the way, though. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, this might be the way. At the very least, we can all agree, I think, that Ray is absolutely part of the harem. Like, 100%, dude. Like, I was like, frick, yeah, man, that's awesome. The level of trust just killed me. And also, like, the level of trust where Melheis says, like, okay, if you, like, walk away from Voldi right now and join me, I'll save your mom. And Voldi's like, nah, bullshit, kill her. And, like, Melheis is like, I'm sorry, what'd you just say? And even Ray's like, yeah, I was already kind of prepared for this possibility, so I'd rather go down swinging, and I'm not, even knowing, like, his mom would not want him to sell Voldi out like that. So Ray, yeah, basically stands his ground. He's like, nah, I was prepared for every possibility. Like, nah, I'm good. And you get this dope scene where Ray goes to try to rescue his mom, and Voldi says, like, I'm gonna give you, like, every bit of magic that I have left. It's not a lot, but I'm gonna give you everything I got left to give you a sword, and I need you to slash at the wall with it, because he gets separated, and that'll get us closer. That'll at least get us closer to taking out Melheis. But like, when he slashes at it, he just can't do it, right? Like, Ray's like, I don't have the energy left, I can't do it. And his mom, his friggin' sweet mom, says, like, you know what? Like, I got to, like, look after you all this time. You are the most precious thing to me, so I don't mind giving myself, the little bit of myself that I have left, to give you the strength you need and the sword you need to power through. And he slashes at Benno even, and clears a path for Voldi, and it's this dope-ass friggin' scene. But, as we find out later, the reason why I said it was important to remember that A, Voldi cheered for his dad, and B, the fact that there was an audience watching from across the kingdom, is because when Voldi cheers on his dad, saying that his father's sword was made with love, the true element to completing a sword, like the true element of a great blacksmith, is putting love into the sword. That was the tradition that friggin' Sheila needed to survive. Remember how Sheila, Ray's mom, needed a tradition, right? Like, needed to find, like, her purpose, or needed to have her purpose / rumor / tradition around to sort of, like, propagate her existence. That was it, like, putting love into a sword, right? Like, putting love into your work, putting love into a blacksmith putting love into a sword. That was what it was, right? This heals her source and brings her back, and Ray gets to keep his mom at the end. And it's like, oh, that's friggin' great. Like, I loved that whole scene. Honestly, it's just such a friggin', like this whole episode, like, it's got great action. It's got really friggin' sweet shippy moments. It's got great, like, character stuff for Ray. An awesome moment where we almost get to see Avo Stilhevia. It's honestly just a really solid episode. I really enjoyed it a whole bunch. But with that said, everybody, that is going to wrap up all of my thoughts on this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then don't forget to boop that up snoot and share if you care. And of course, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all these beautiful names. And hey, if you would like to join these beautiful people floating across your screen, there are 2 ways to do so. First of which being checking out our Patreon page linked below, and the second one, of course, being for a few bucks more, hitting that join button and becoming a member of the channel, getting yourself a cool nifty little coffee cup badge, as well as some emotes to use in premieres. So, you know, 2 ways of doing it, and if you choose to check out either one of those, a big thank you to you. But on that note, everybody, that's all I got. So, until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.